Hello, Pretty Casual Gaming. It's me, Tehnoobcake, and with me as always, it's Slanderman.
Hello, everyone.
Today we're going to be doing a podcast about the new game Outriders by Square Enix and People Can Fly. We were supposed to have a guest on, but due to unforeseen circumstances, they weren't able to be on, which is why we're late with the video. It was meant to be recorded last week. We said we'd put it off to give the other person time, but then more circumstances popped up, so it's a week late, but here's last week's video. And so to begin with, I've played it on console and Slandy's played it on PC, so we both have a view of the different bugs and stuff that have happened on each platform. And on that note, my first question is to Sandy, which is, what was your first impressions on Outriders, like unfiltered?
So firstly, I played the demo before I launched as well. With the demo, I didn't expect found too many bugs or so, or crashes or errors, so that was actually more or less flawless for me. And kind of the same with the launch as well, apart from some server connections issues at the start, but afterwards, like a day or two, I haven't had too many problems playing it in solo. I did have some problems while playing with Bates, who was supposed to be our guest here today as well. Apart from that, I didn't have any major problems with the game. Actually found it running pretty smooth and nothing too major game breaking bugs or things that didn't stop me from playing it. So I have completed it as well. Finished it this week. Yeah, this weekend I finished it on my Devastator as well. So, what about you, Noob? Did you experience any problems or bugs on the PlayStation?
Yeah. On the PlayStation, one of the biggest problems I noticed quite early on, because I played with my housemate co-op, and one of the problems we was both having is the way applications work on PlayStation, because you can have errors and it shuts the whole application down. Then you have to reload the application up and play it from there. These errors, you could go through some windows of time where they just wouldn't happen, and then you'd have it where you'd load it up and every 2 minutes it was just erroring out, which was quite frustrating. Adding on to that, there was the fact that when you went to go onto the game, you had to sign in, because of it being obviously online all the time. And then, so with the sign in, there was a problem where it wouldn't log you in for like 10 minutes. And the only advice we could find online was just wait 10 minutes. And I was like, well, you don't really want to be waiting 10 minutes to get on a game.
No.
One of the other big problems we had was inventories getting completely emptied.
Oh yeah, I did hear about that one. Luckily, I haven't had that problem on PC, but I have heard that the bug is around on the PC as well. So
yeah, I finished the game within the first week of it coming out. I was on World Tier 15, and I played Technomancer. So I had most of it finished. I've dipped my toe into the expedition system, which was quite fun. The main thing was obviously with the errors. Me and my housemate would have finished it a lot sooner had it not been for the errors, and it could get a little frustrating at times where we were debating. It was like we didn't know if we could continue, and so some days we'd just stop because the bugs were stressing us out that much, particularly losing items. We almost lost a legendary, or at least we thought we did, because it cancelled out just as we looted it. Thankfully, that had been the save point, so that was good.
Yeah, luckily.
So, other than bugs, we'll start with the story. What was your opinion on that?
Now I haven't played the story full out because I wanted to do that with Bezos on stream. So I've done the first few areas, like the first city and some of the icy mountains. So I didn't get too far into the story yet, but apart from the story, I actually liked the environment. I kept meeting the new areas and the enemies as well, how they were like fit change for each region you got into. So I like that part. What I enjoyed of the story so far is it's it is a bit simple. Like it is straightforward. You arrive on a new planet after Earth being completely destroyed, I think, by humans.
Yeah, I've got all like the lore things, but I haven't managed to take enough of a look to quite figure out what happened to Earth yet. But
Yeah,
that was my general idea.
yeah. And the humans basically shipped themselves off to a new planet they found, which should be inhabitable for them. So, but when they arrived, they actually found out that a lot of other stuff is going on that planet. So, which basically gave them problems. Yeah. So.
My opinion on the story was it was quite enjoyable. As you say, it was a basic story. You know, we've seen it before, kind of thing. I was actually a little disappointed at the ending. Not so much what happened to it, but there was a big, the big final boss was someone who you interacted with prior in the story, but they were like so forgettable that when it came to the final boss, my housemate actually had to point out that this was someone we'd fought before. I was just like, "Who's this?" You know, it
Yeah.
wasn't. It just there was a few enemies that could have made good final bosses for the narrative, but they just weren't used, so it was disappointing in that respect.
Yeah.
Other than that, like the lore of what's happened on the planet and the story of what I could gather going through it and what had caused everything was more interesting than I think the actual story itself was, which is a bit of a letdown. But I enjoyed playing the story as
Yeah.
much as it was a little disappointing.
Mhm.
But going off of the story, obviously the main draw to the game is the gameplay. And I've seen
Yes.
a lot of reviews who are like, you know, it's just sit behind cover and shoot. But playing the game, I didn't find that personally. Maybe it's because I was on the higher world tier. I was on literally the highest by the end. But you very much had to move a lot. Is more I noticed. Like whoever has been able to sit and hide behind cover and shoot, they've not been playing it how I played it. Monsters would come knock you out of cover instantly. You always had to I had to kite a lot of enemies half
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. I basically had to do the same with my Devastator. I made mine very. I went for the tank skill tree build of my Devastator. So and uh, I could take a few hits and so on, but on the when I switched from this group play to solo, I actually had to switch down world tire because I didn't actually do the damage, and the enemies were actually hitting quite much on me compared to how much I did to them as well. So I ended up lowering the world tire for myself during the story at least on my Devastator because I felt like it was too hard at that moment. Near halfway of the game, I think it was. So.
Oh no, but I've not actually done it solo. I did the whole thing with my housemate, and
Yeah.
It's not a game that I think I would play solo. As enjoyable as it was definitely something that I'd rather play with friends than play alone.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you found that playing with both solo and with bait.
I think when I played it, I had the best experience when I played with someone. One of the reasons is that you can revive each other and so on. And when you were playing solo, you basically only had one life. If you died in that life, it was go back to respawn instantly. So you had to be very careful when you were soloing in high tire, world tire compared to the co-op. So when I look at it, I think the best experience I had was in co-op because of the things I did. There were so many things that if something went wrong, you had to go back to the old respawn and you had to do it again. It didn't have a second life, more or less. So, and I mean, how I built my Devastator to be was also like I wanted to be the one who was in a group who was on the front lines, like making sure I took all the damage away from the others while healing myself up with the passive. So
I obviously played Technomancer, which I built from the beginning as a healer. That was my intention from the get-go. My housemate played Devastator, so we actually didn't have DPS, and during the end of the game, we started to notice it a lot more, especially when it was on World Tier 15. Damage became a problem. It would have been maybe 2 areas before the final boss. We actually had it where we both took a look at a talent tree and was like, let's change things around to try and increase the way we do damage. And we looked at the mods that we had on our armors and stuff, which is something I'll get to in a minute.
Yeah.
And we noticed that damage is really important. I'm seeing a lot of people say the bosses are very bullet spongy. It's just big health pools. And I don't disagree. I think there are some mechanics. There was definitely room for improvement, but it's definitely a good foundational setting. Like, I know that they've come out saying that it's not a live service game. They don't want to keep updating it just to, draw more money out of people. But I wouldn't mind if they have DLCs, and if they do have DLCs, I hope they increase more mechanics and less health spongy. Because as an MMO player, one of the things I hate is health sponge bosses. I much prefer something that's maybe a bit short, but it'll kick your ass if you mess up a mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm on the same page because I actually looked up the video because on my Devastator when I was trying out the high world tire when I was soloing, and that person he basically said that when you lived into the story and stuff, it felt like for him and the others he played with that the world higher world tires was not actually meant to be played in while you were leveling, because the mobs were getting many item levels over you, and some of your weapons and your anomaly powers and so on, they didn't it didn't feel like it caught up to you while you were leveling and getting a higher world tire at the same time. So now that I got to max level here in this week, I'm interesting to see how I'm gonna feel like doing the end game stuff in the game while getting new gear to see how the world tire is going to affect me in that sense now. Because when I got to the end on like when I needed like 25% of the end game or so, I switched it basically down to world tire. I think it was 3 or 4. So the enemies was basically 1 or 2 levels above my own, I think. And I actually had a lot of fun doing that while leveling there. Instead of like when I was, I can't remember if it was 9 or 10 on my Devastator. I felt like I could just use 3-4 max in a row, and I could barely see the enemy health bar moving on some of the elites. So, and
One of the things, sorry. One of the things I noticed with the world tiers is the higher the world tier you get, you very much have to have an idea of what you want your character to be.
Yes.
I think it helped that early on I knew exactly the build I was going for my character. It took a little while to take a gander at the skill tree, figure out what would go, and I looked at the mods and figured out what mods are best to build this healer that I was trying to build. And so I actually had it for going through the story, just leveling. We actually had it where the world tier would just automatically update the moment we unlock the next world tier.
Yes.
So I was always at the max world tier I could possibly be on.
Yeah.
But my housemate started to struggle with it a little because he didn't have a full idea of what his build was going to be. And then the moment he figured out what his build was, we then had no issues, even on world tier 15.
Yeah. I have seen some. I mean, I went completely tanky on mine, which would probably assume I would have a group to play with, which I actually didn't. So it makes perfect sense that I had to go down in world tire for my character.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about actually switching the tree build up a bit because I didn't do a lot of damage. But I ended up just lowering the world tire and got to the end game instead. Then I will try to adjust the difficulty in that way afterwards. So yeah.
So one of the things I want to bring up is one of the definite, what I would say is the resounding positive of Outriders, which I enjoyed the game thoroughly. Like, I'm not trying to shit on the other stuff. I've got my complaints about them all. But one of the things that I couldn't complain about was the modding system that you had for the gear. How you I can't remember what it's called. It's like the crafting system.
Yes.
But it was really, I loved the way that worked. The fact that you when you disassembled a piece of gear, you could get the mods off it.
Yes.
And then that was stored in a library, and then you could put them on, and it just allowed me to make some really crazy builds. Because the original build I had was with blighted bullets. And I originally made my blighted bullets really powerful, and they also healed when I ran out. And it also meant I had almost infinite ammo because I used an LMG with the blighted bullets, and the blighted bullets they didn't consume ammo whilst I was in blighted. And then I'd set the LMGs I had to suppressor, I think it was called, or something like that, and that would have 150 bullets per magazine.
Oh yeah.
And then I had it where the blighted bullets affected 2 magazines, so that's 300. And then I also had it where if I got a kill, I got I think it was like 25% ammo back. So magazines would just last forever. And then they also inflicted toxic on an enemy, and toxic because of the way I'd built, toxic then inflicted vulnerability. And that was just with a few mods I built this ridiculous build. By the end game, I actually changed it out. I ended up having the cryo turret, the drop ice ability, and then just a big healing wind kind of ability.
Yes.
Which healed everyone around me. And I actually started to move away from class mods. There were a couple of class mods I kept, but then I actually started to focus on stuff like when I shoot an enemy, it summons a sand tornado on them, which I actually had to get off a legendary item. But then when I shot them every like 6 seconds, it would reset and I summoned another sand tornado, and so long as they stayed in it, it would do a ton of damage, which was great considering the build that I was doing with Technomancer involved freezing enemies in place. So I'd freeze them in place, and then they'd have this sand tornado just dealing constant damage. And so you could build some ridiculous damage builds. I had it where if I fell, one of the mods I managed to get was if I fall beneath 30% health, I ended up getting a shield. And that shield usually lasted long enough for me to get one of my heal abilities off cooldown. And then I was right up to max health again. It just made me unstoppable. Like when you figure out the modding system, you can really build some ridiculous builds.
Yeah. For me, I basically use most of the class abilities at the start. So I had I think it was called Golem. Golem. Like you encase yourself with all the stones and you gain a lot of damage reduction and so on. I had most of my mods to affect that ability, so to improve my tankiness for group play. So yeah, but I could see a lot of other fun stuff as well with the modding there. So
I don't know if you got fully into it, but I'm sure you could see the potential even from an early level.
Yeah, I could. One of the things I also did just to try it out on my Devastator, at the start I went with the armor unlocked from the pre-order. Just try to upgrade that as time went by. I think the purpose of it actually helped quite a lot. Since I didn't have to swap too many items out, I could just keep disassemble everything I got. I didn't have to make sure if an item dropped and it had a mod on it, I actually wanted to keep in my inventory for later use in the game. So in that sense, I actually enjoyed leveling up with the pre-order stuff, just to make sure I got everything I want to use later on in my inventory already. So if an item dropped, I could say, yay, I will. I don't have to think about that. I can just dismantle it, and I will have the module available for me later when I get to max level as well. So that's.
Keeping on the pre-order stuff, one of the things that I found really annoying, because I didn't do that. I used like one piece of the pre-order stuff, and then realized that the stuff I was getting was just miles better immediately. So yeah. I used it for like 2 seconds and then put it in my storage. One of the things that really wound me up is you can't delete it, you can't sell it, you can't dismantle it. Yeah. So instead, it's one of the problems I had with the pre-order stuff is that it's just wasting storage space.
Yeah,
and that really annoyed me.
Yeah, that was basically my issue at first with it. So that's actually why I came to the conclusion of why didn't I use it and upgrade it as a progress through the story, and then I had my own little side challenge to keep upgrading that armor to max out my character while living in that way. So,
as someone who's
go.
As someone who's while she's saying how you kept upgrading again, someone who's reached end game level, one of the things I actually realized is getting legendaries is not actually about. Maybe the legendary class armor, I haven't actually got to that yet, so I don't know how that works. But getting the legendaries was not the way to build the most powerful build. Getting the legendaries and dismantling them so that you got the mods And then what I did was I actually sold a ton of stuff that I already had the mods for, so I could get some scrap, because I didn't sell a lot. I disassembled most things. And then I went back to the beginning area and I bought green items. And then I upgraded the level of the green items to cap. And then I upgraded the rarity. And as you upgrade the rarity, it asks you to pick between 3 mods.
Yeah.
And then if you upgrade the rarity again, you can pick another 3 mods. And it was the best way to get both, because obviously you can only actually edit 1 mod once you go into the editing crafting system. So doing it from green, I actually had much more control over what I wanted. And so my character at the moment looks like they belong at the beginning of the game, because the armor they're wearing is some of the beginning armor. But power-wise, I am destroying everything.
Yeah. So that's basically what I did in sense with the pre-order stuff. So I just kept on upgrading it to make sure that the items I have is equal to whatever is dropping for me at the moment. So I must admit, when I got a new level or when I upped the world tire, I immediately got a lot of better items, but after some progress in dismantling the items I got and a little time after, not instantly, because I did need a lot of materials to upgrade the pre-order stuff, but in the end my weapons ended up doing just as much damage as the ones who dropped for me as well. So
keeping on the customization, obviously with the mods, one of the other things that I would obviously want to talk about is the character customization. Now, my opinion on that is kind of two-way. I'm glad that they had the character customization. It was the stuff that we did have was decent enough. I like the fact that you could change the way your character looked at any point in the game. You couldn't change gender, but you could change your look.
Yeah.
One of the complaints I have is there was not a lot of options, really. Like
no.
you had like 8 hairstyles to choose from, and then like you could change your eye color and a little bit your face. You had a couple of facial hairs, and it was there was room for more, plenty more.
Yeah, I kind of agree on that. Like I said, I like that you could go just while you're leveling or gearing at any time in the game. You could just go and change your character's customization. So that is a good thing. I actually liked. But like you said, there wasn't a lot of choices actually to go with apart from that. So I haven't used it too much, but so yeah, it's it got its bad and good things. So
I have a few more questions before we end. The first one would be, looking towards the future of the game, do you think they'll do DLCs? Because obviously you've not actually watched the cutscene, so I don't know if you know, but they've left some threads like the game overall, the story is exactly what they said. It was from the beginning to the end. There was a story. It finished.
Yeah.
It was a satisfying story, and that it was a start to end. But there were a few threads that they've left, and in the very ending cinematic, they actually point out what they've left those threads open. So I think there's definitely potential for DLC. There's at least 2 little threads that they've left that I think could become DLCs in the future. So whilst they've said that, it's not a live service game, we don't intend to keep packaging shit out for it, I reckon there's DLCs in the future.
Yeah.
So long as the game sells well.
When I look at that game, I think it's gonna be like probably around like Destiny and Division, where they have some not small downloadable DLCs, but more like small expansions for them. I could see them like having for the game in later times. So for like new zones which will have new zones, new items, sets, and mods on them as well. So maybe some new enemy varieties as well. So in that sense, I think they will probably be small expansions instead of like, I guess expansions would basically be DLCs as well nowadays. But so yeah, I think that is something they could do to keep the game going on after post launch here now, because I'm pretty sure in a month or so the hardcore gamers of the game will have like the best armor.
If they haven't already.
Yeah, precisely. So, and if they want those people to keep on playing the game, they do have to put out some DLCs or maybe some leaderboards of some sort. They may have that already. I'm not completely sure with the expeditions in the end game.
With the expeditions, I don't know if it's a leaderboard thing, but it's definitely it's a timed thing. Like you are timed. But I can't remember if it's a leader. I think there's like leaderboards between friends, but I don't know if it's like a universal one. I forgot to check.
Yeah, but like that could be something they could improve upon as well to make it more end game, I guess. Apart from just having to gear a character up as best as possible. I know that like Diablo at the moment with Diablo 3 with all the seasons and everything, they have a leaderboard for each class sets now, and that is basically what makes the game having an end game each new season when they add new items and so on in the game. So
sorry.
So I think that is how they in that way they can improve the end game with new items and so on.
So before I ask the final question, have you got what you wanted to ask yourself?
No, I don't think so. I have any.
Okay. So for my final question, it's including the bad, including the good, every small little gameplay, story, zones, all that kind of stuff. How would you rate the game, and what would you say was the favorite thing in the game?
How I would
out of 10.
Out of 10. I'm not good with like rating games because I feel myself like a simple person who quickly enjoys the game if there's just a small element in the game I actually enjoy. So, but if I had to put like a number or a rating, I would. I think I will go like something in a category of like, instead of numbers, I will probably say go with bad, or right, or good, perfect, and masterful, or flawless, or then I think I will probably put it in a good spot on that rating, because I think the game has a lot of good things going on, but what is putting it off for me is that it has a lot of connection errors at the moment, which is putting off all the co-op stuff for the game. If they manage to fix that, I would say it's gonna be a good game you can enjoy with your friends, and just go on a couple, not even just a couple of hours. You can just take an hour or half an hour and do a few expeditions or so, because they aren't like that long in sense of other other games. So I think if they manage to fix the bug, so I will probably put it a bit above good standing. So yeah. What about you? What would you rate the game?
Keeping on my own scale, and that's out of 10, I would probably position it currently at 6. It was a game that I was definitely interested in prior to its release. I hadn't actually seen a lot, but I'd played the demo, and I knew from that point on I was going to get some enjoyment from the game, period. What I wanted out of the game were experience to play with my housemate and play with, a friend.
Yeah.
It definitely gave me that. I have to knock points off, obviously, because of the bugs, because they weren't small little bugs that, you could overlook. They were ones that were halting progress, really.
Yeah.
And so that was not the best thing.
No.
I definitely think it's a game that needs to be played with your friends. It's not a game I can imagine myself playing solo.
No.
But there was a lot of potential in it. And so if they do go with DLC, that's definitely something I'd like to see. I think to begin with, they need to be a little lenient on pricing if they're going to release DLCs, because of the start of it, how it was.
Yeah.
There's definitely some forgiving to do, I think, from the player base, and they need to earn that forgiveness, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a solid game for it. It's enjoyable. I'll probably have a few runs more of it before I get truly bored of it, but there is definitely a lack of finale stuff to do.
Yeah.
Not so much that there isn't stuff to do, the expeditions are there. It's more at some point you're done with the expeditions and then you sit there going, what now?
Yeah.
And so, as you say, they definitely need to do something to keep people interested in, because people are going to have all the endgame stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, it was a solid, good fun.
Yep. So,
But if that's with nothing else left to say on Outriders, I think we can start closing up the episode. Going forward from here, we have at least 2 out of the next 3 of our podcasts kind of figured out. We have an idea for one that we haven't actually got fully planned yet, so that's something that me and you will obviously go to do. We've got 2 guests lined up for them, and about out of the 3, 2 of them are Final Fantasy 14 based, obviously. Next week's will be about patch 5.5, so that'll involve obviously spoilers, which Slandy has agreed that he doesn't mind that I may spoil it. And then obviously going into next month, there's the Endwalker announcements from FanFest, and we will be discussing that with another guest, hopefully, so long as nothing goes wrong, obviously. Circumstances change.
Yes.
Other than that, I actually have plans, speaking to Logix, our original guest, to figure out myself how to record like a reaction. And I'll probably be doing a few, if I figure it out, I'll be doing some reaction videos for FanFest stuff, which I will actually upload on this channel. I won't be putting it on my own, so it'll be easier for people to find.
Yes.
I don't think we have other plans beyond that just yet, so tell them about where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm on both YouTube and Twitch, where I mostly stream on Twitch, but I do upload my VODs and other stuff a bit on YouTube, and of course on Discord as well. Where can they find you, Noob?
Currently nowhere, as always. But one thing that I needed to mention before we forgot is that we are actually working on a Discord server for the podcast itself. Once I've neatened it up and made it more available to other people, we will be obviously putting a link to that in our description once we can eventually do it.
Yes.
But that is something that we plan to have. That way you can find updates on the podcast from that rather than us spamming other channels of it. So it's be more dedicated to the podcast and rather than like our individual stuff.
Yep.
But other than that, I think we'll see you all. The next one will be next week. Given that we were a week late, it will still remain to the original schedule. So
Yeah.
that'll be next week with a guest about Final Fantasy 14, patch 5.5. So goodbye, YouTube.
Bye. Take care, everyone.